Good morning, everyone. Um, I welcome you all on this live cast on the World Human Rights Day, and I want to extend my wishes to all those defenders of the human rights who should be remembered today for their selfless sacrifice to uphold not only theirs but our rights as well. As discussed earlier, through the post, that we'll be discussing about a couple of incidents that puts up a sort of a mark in my head today with respect to the abuse of human rights that we have faced in our democracy in the last few years, especially in the last 1 year. One of the factors is about manual scavenging. People haven't been looking at it from that aspect of human rights for a long time. We have been talking technology, we have been talking processes, mechanisms, civil policy. But I think the core and the spine of this issue is basically human rights. You and I, who exist in the urban infrastructure and earn our livelihood at a daily level, we forget one simple concept, that it is not only necessary for respecting the rights of the underprivileged, but it is also important to realize that there are basic human rights and dignity which every service giving person in this urban infrastructure deserves. The country's politics usually tends to ignore them only for the major half of the democratic system, except for the time when their vote counts. Commitments and promises have been made off grid for a long period of time, and if I clearly remember that the constitutional framework of India, which was, if I remember correctly, was signed on the 24th of January 1950, which was also the last day of the assembly of that session, guaranteed a certain set of rights for all the citizens of this country. Of late, we have developed in terms of technological mindset, in terms of emotional mindset, but we have somehow chosen to ignore the very fact that we also deny basic human rights to a lot of citizens in this country. If I do not hold the data right now, and I'm into a conversation, therefore I would like to highlight that I think majority of the population of this country actually believe in enjoying human rights, which we don't realize are human rights. We have basic fundamental rights which are also a part of the human rights structure, but we often tend to ignore the fact that there are a lot of other people who do not have a voice, maybe on social media these days and other platforms, but who deserve to be exercising their human right values as well. I think one of the things that can actually solve this entire issue is technology. We talk of artificial intelligence, we talk of automation, robotics. If these ventures, if these technological advancements do not help in resolving basic core values of human existence, it becomes very difficult for us to carry on, because I am a strict believer of the fact that technology is made by humans for the humans. It is not made by robots. A robot is a product of your imagination. That means we can create and clone ourselves by our imagination, but we choose to ignore the certain basic values that everyone in this global environment deserves. Speaking about manual scavenging, I think when today we come across issues like this, I with certain set of authority, I can say that one death every 5 days is an average that a manual scavenger loses his life in this country. And of late, I still remember seeing the photograph of a son crying in front of the slain body of a manual scavenger a few weeks back in the heart of Delhi. I tend to realize, and I tend to start establishing a question: what are we fighting for? Who are we fighting for? When we choose to ignore these basic fundamentals and rights that every individual supporting the urban infrastructure, supporting you and me to survive in this city, is denied, how can we call ourselves as an established democracy? What does a democracy mean? A democracy doesn't mean a voting practice. A democracy means that you and I both choose to stay in an environment which is constitutionally protected, is a constitutional framework for a welfare state. Where is their welfare? And their welfare extends beyond the daily wage that we provide them. So technology has to get amalgamated with emotion. Only then will we see some motion moving in that direction. My second point is that why are we not subsidizing technology, especially establishing a lab, in order to come out with technology which can completely eliminate the existence of manual scavenging as far as India is concerned. I think this is one of the most rudimentary procedures that we continue in this country. We do not or we cannot call ourselves progressive and moving towards a developed economy status. However much your GDP enhances, if there is a single death due to manual scavenging happening, you and I do not have the opportunity or the great opportunity to call ourselves as a part of the developing economy. My last submission in this would be there are few tiny bits of invention, or I would say discoveries, which have been made, or technological advancements which have been made with respect to elimination of manual scavenging. Machines have been brought in. I would say gas calculators, approximators, blowers have been made in, but why aren't we seeing the private and the public sector joining hands to eliminate this? I think this is not in our priority list. I chose to speak on this issue not only because of the fact that today a lot of people will be speaking on the other generic rights-based issues, but something as local as this has to be focused on, and therefore our concentration is on the fact of elimination of manual scavenging. My second point of assertion, which I think we are choosing to ignore, is women empowerment. Whether we go on to start with the Me Too campaign, or should we go at the workplace environment for women, or should I speak about the decrease on, I think, one of the least possible participation of women in the country's polity, or should I go into the government services, or should I go into the private sector and the involvement of women in the decision-making chairs of the private sector, or should I go on to the extent of the most recent thing, that is prohibiting women from entering sacred places. For example, the Sabrimala issue. In spite of a court order, we see a great defiance in the civil structure to resist such a kind of thing. Now, I agree there are strong beliefs in it, and therefore there could have been a better way to evolve to a consensus. But any consensus which denies women equal participation, especially at a time when half of India's population is exactly women, I don't think in again a constitutional and a democratic framework it is acceptable that you deny the very basic fundamental rights to one half of the civilization and expecting it to be followed. I do not blame the male counterparts for this. I do think that the women themselves also hold a quite a amount of responsibility, and they are trying to come out of it. I think more or less we'll have to try and encourage this behavior in the fundamental structure of this constitution, so that we do not suppress views which are often termed as dissent, which I don't consider dissent because these are all progressive, and denying the very basic fundamental rights for one half of the population on the basis of a biological feature is not only unjustified, I may go on to the extent of saying it is criminal. You cannot do this at any point of time. Therefore, what we see as an extension of the Me Too campaign, as an extension of hypocrisy that survives around the women empowerment issue in the Indian structure, I do feel that to create a resistance and to create a system wherein we try to prohibit women from not only entering few places but also, I would say, entering few domains in life is not only I would say demeaning, but it also throws the light of the progressive involvement that we want to get involved to for the future generation. Now, for example, I work in this area of sustainability and social responsibility. Let's take these 2 points very clearly. Let's see manual scavenging and let's see the abuse of rights for women in this country. How can you be socially responsible, or as far as sustainability is concerned, what are you going to show your next generation? What examples are you going to set in front of your next generation? Because believe me, the next generation is going to blow you out. They are not going to be in acceptance of what is happening around, and they are not going to accept seriously whatever taboos and traditions, in the name of traditions, whatever people are doing. So as technology comes in, as the global community comes into one single global village, traditions which are scientifically not backed, which does not ensure human rights and dignity to each and every segment of the society, are going to be blown away with. I think it's time when you and I need to stand together and not only remember the great defenders of these rights, but also ensure at today's level to celebrate the journey of such individuals and to involve ourselves in that journey, where we go on to set the stone a bit further. Your and my effort will not change the entire world, but nobody stops us from setting our stone a bit further. So my only request is to every single person who's joined today in this cast is, please respect your rights, enjoy your rights, but also ensure that you respect and you let others enjoy their fundamental human rights as well. A quick referral, I think there is a UN Declaration of Human Rights. I do not remember when was the exact date of its operationalization, but I think what we get to understand is human rights is not divided only per se in certain paradigms, whether it's pay parity, workplace, politics, I would say basic human rights. Everything in together constitutes the International Human Rights Charter. If you want to learn more about it, I would request you to please go and read once the UN, the United Nations Human Rights Declaration. And I think it's a day when we remember the heroes who have worked tirelessly and selflessly to ensure human rights are protected for all civilizations across the globe. These days it's very critical, not only because of our internal understanding and the decreasing order of respecting human rights that is on trend, but I think also globally, under the cast of huge amount of migration that's happening across the world, it becomes even more important for us to realize that these migrants also deserve equal amount of respect. Their human rights need to be respected, or else we will not be able to claim ourselves as a developed human civilization for generations to come. So thank you and wish you a lot of luck, and with all the best wishes, let's respect each other and let's respect each other's rights on this Human Rights Day.